Now, live from Dallas and Fort Worth, this is a special presentation of CBS 11 News at 6, COVID and the Classroom.
From pandemic learning pods to in-home tutors, working parents scrambling to find help in managing online instruction.
What happens to her footwear, her clothing, her backpack, her books? To what extent are we going to start spraying everything down?
After-school COVID precautions for students learning in person. Health experts weigh in on what does and does not need disinfecting.
Sometimes you have to make tough decisions in life.
And committing to a college, sight unseen, how COVID has upended the recruitment process for student athletes. Good evening, everyone. I'm Doug Dunbar. Thank you so much for spending part of your week with us here in our week-long series, COVID and the Classroom. Every day this week here at 6 o'clock, we're dedicating the entire, what would normally be a newscast, to education and providing as many resources as we can to all of you out there, parents, teachers, and students. Most first-year teachers have a pretty good vision of what their first fall in the classroom is going to look like. But for those, obviously, who are starting their career now in 2020, things certainly are going to look a whole lot different. Our Nicole Nielsen begins our coverage today. She sat down with some first-year teachers to discuss how they're navigating the changes.
I had my interview in April and it was virtual, and back in April I was like, oh, maybe this will all be over. We can just start in person and it would just be a wild summer. But now that we're actually here, it's like, oh, okay, this is a little different than what I imagined.
For a first-year teacher, fall 2020 expectations have changed.
So what is it like getting ready to start teaching during a pandemic?
It is very stressful.
Very hectic.
Yeah.
Requires a lot of flexibility. Things are changing day to day.
These three teachers, all in Arlington ISD, will be starting the school year completely virtually, learning brand new online management systems on top of just getting used to teaching.
The technology on top of learning, like all the teacher stuff, like that's kind of, it's very like overloading.
It comes after a decision to go virtual was made by the district last month. They plan to use a mix of live and recorded classes. The teachers say it's nothing like they prepared for in school.
So I'm learning a new way of creating content and assigning content and then grading content. So it's much different.
The district as a whole is really making sure that we get adequate training and that we're up to date with everything we need to know.
Regardless, they told me they're taking it one step at a time and trying to stay positive.
Everyone's really excited about their first year teaching. It's your first group of kids, and it's not going to look the same. Aside from being, nervous, is there any part of you that's just disappointed?
Definitely. Be graceful. We are being very graceful with our students, your children. Show us some grace as well.
And to watch that full-length interview, you can do so on CBSN on our website, cbsdfw.com. Doug?
Nicole, we understand Arlington ISD, they've already announced they're completely virtual for now, but is the plan later to basically reassess and take a look at the semester a little farther down the road?
Yeah, their hope is to reopen their doors on September 27th, but according to their reopening plan, a lot of factors are going to play into whether they think it's safe at that time or not, including just, where we are in the pandemic at that point. So they plan to reassess and then let students know when they know that it's safe to head back to the classroom.
All good information. Nicole Nielsen, thank you so much. On to Fort Worth, where a middle school teacher who quit in protest last week today showed up to clean out her classroom. Her name is Rebecca Asher. She has spent the last 5 years at Ed Wilkie Middle School, but resigned in front of a lot of people during this Eagle Mountain Saginaw ISD board meeting last week. Asher said that she had quit and chose to do that rather than come back during the pandemic. She felt there are still too many unanswered questions.
Concern mostly for teachers. Because we all want to be back in the classroom. We do. The concern mostly is how are we going to enforce it? Are there going to be adequate protections? What if somebody gets sick, and how is that going to be managed?
The first day of school for Eagle Mountain Saginaw ISD is 1 week from Thursday. And in Mansfield, another day of long wait times for device pickup. Chopper 11 live right now over the district's Performing Arts Center. Cars have been lined up for a good majority of the day. Usually 2 lines of cars we've seen all day. Some parents say that they have actually seen people bring gas canisters to fill up cars or get food deliveries from family members as they wait. This is all because after the pickup disaster we reported on over the weekend, the district said that they were using a new strategy to try and speed up the process, but it appears the long lines remains. We did speak to our Robbie Owens live at 5 o'clock. She said that despite the lines that we're seeing, even right now from Chopper 11 here, things have been moving through the day and definitely better than the weekend, so that's positive. It is a huge decision that's facing the parents out there in the age of COVID-19, return to the class or continue learning online. Not everybody feels the same way. Even those opting for virtual learning are looking for help to try and manage a process that can easily overwhelm. Speaking of Robbie Owens, tonight she takes a closer look at the so-called pandemic pods.
For parents, back-to-school worries often operate on an age-adjusted scale. For instance, how does a 6-year-old social distance? A recent park outing for the Tisnoy family sealed the deal.
He gets right in my son's face and is like, I'm almost as tall as you. And I'm like, oh, let's social distance. Take 2 steps back. It was in that moment I realized I'm not sending him to school.
So that's a no on social distancing little ones. And even if your family takes precautions, what about the kid in the next row?
We know of people that just flat out think it's a hoax.
Chris and Lisa Grams are also opting for theirs to start the school year online. Still, they know that managing schoolwork while they work is no easy task.
Now I have client phone calls from all over the country at different time zones, and a 6-year-old showing me his Paw Patrol figures on a Zoom call. That gets interesting.
So to keep everyone focused, they're forming a so-called pandemic pod.
We're trying to coordinate with some neighbors of like mind to maybe have a pod of 3 to 5 first grade kids all together, so they still get some social interaction, but they have a professional guiding them through the learning process.
Sharing the cost for the in-home educators also makes the option more accessible to more families. Still, some say they'll do what's necessary.
It's going to be a large expense, and it's not the ideal situation, but at least I have control over this situation.
There is no right or wrong decision. You have to do what's best for your family.
Robbie Owens, CBS 11 News.
Still to come here on COVID and the classroom, school resource officers back on campus for the first time since March, how they feel about students returning and their role for the new school year. Also, it's a dilemma for some parents whose children are learning in person. What should you sanitize when they get home? The precautions some health experts say you should be taking.